Hi, this is Rachel Israel with STEM News and Global World Report. We have breaking news that will have a huge impact on the global scene in the very near future. Let's take a look at what's going on around the world.
Donald Trump has a long and complicated history with Social Security. He's spent years courting voters with promises to protect it. He even attacked other Republicans for daring to touch this vital program. But behind the scenes, a very different story was unfolding. Trump's administration, despite his earlier promises, began dismantling Social Security piece by piece. The Social Security Administration announced plans to cut 7,000 staff members. Dozens of field offices were slated to close. This was a clear attack on the very infrastructure of Social Security, making it harder for Americans to access the benefits they earned. Experts warned that these cuts would have devastating consequences. Martin O'Malley, a former SSA commissioner, predicted the system could collapse within months. Imagine millions of Americans suddenly cut off from their only source of income. This wasn't just about numbers on a balance sheet. It was about real people's lives. The Trump administration tried to downplay the severity of the situation, but the truth was undeniable. This wasn't about streamlining government. It was a calculated assault on a program that millions of Americans rely on, and it was about to get worse. Enter Elon Musk, the billionaire CEO of Tesla and SpaceX, and now a key player in the Trump administration. Appointed as the head of the newly formed Department of Government Efficiency, Musk brought his signature brand of Silicon Valley disruption to the federal government. But his vision for efficiency seemed to involve dismantling essential services, and Social Security was firmly in his crosshairs. Musk's rhetoric about Social Security was alarming, to say the least. He repeatedly referred to it as a Ponzi scheme, echoing the language of far-right Republicans who have long sought to privatize the program. His comments, far from being off-the-cuff remarks, were part of a broader push to shrink the government, even if it meant leaving millions of Americans vulnerable. The White House attempted to distance itself from Musk's inflammatory statements, but the damage was done. His words, coupled with the administration's actions, painted a clear picture. Social Security, as we knew it, was under attack. The American people, however, were not going down without a fight. Across the country, from town halls to social media, a wave of outrage erupted. Voters, many of whom had relied on Social Security for generations, flooded congressional offices with calls and emails. They packed town hall meetings, demanding answers and accountability from their elected officials. The town halls were particularly revealing, exposing the growing rift between the people and their representatives. In Michigan and North Carolina, Republican Representatives Bill Huizenga and Chuck Edwards faced the wrath of their constituents. They were bombarded with questions about the proposed cuts, with voters expressing fear and anger at the prospect of losing their hard-earned benefits. The backlash was swift and bipartisan. Even some Republicans, recognizing the political peril of attacking such a popular program, began to voice their concerns. The pressure was mounting, and the Trump administration found itself facing a full-blown crisis of its own making. The breaking point came with a bombshell report in the Washington Post, exposing the full extent of the administration's plans to gut Social Security. The report, based on leaked documents and insider accounts, revealed the devastating impact the cuts would have on millions of Americans. It put a human face on the issue, highlighting the stories of seniors, people with disabilities, and working families who relied on Social Security to survive. Faced with mounting public pressure and scathing media coverage, the Trump administration was forced to back down. In a stunning reversal, the White House announced that it was canceling the proposed cuts to Social Security's telephone customer service. It was a clear victory for the American people, a testament to the power of collective action and a free press. But the fight is far from over. The forces that seek to dismantle Social Security are powerful and persistent. They will continue to spread misinformation and sow division in their attempts to undermine this vital program. We must remain vigilant, informed, and engaged in the fight to protect Social Security for generations to come.
Join me as I dive into the controversial world of Trump's proposed Social Security cuts and see if I can make sense of the outrage that's sparking a massive backlash. The topic of Social Security cuts is one that affects us all, whether you're a retiree, a worker, or simply a concerned citizen. The proposed changes to this vital program have sparked widespread outrage, and for good reason. The potential implications for the future are dire, and it's essential that we understand what's at stake. The main issue at hand is that Trump's proposed budget includes significant cuts to Social Security, which would have a devastating impact on millions of Americans. This is not just about numbers on a spreadsheet, it's about real people who rely on these benefits to survive. The public's reaction has been fierce, with many calling out the president for breaking his campaign promises to protect Social Security. It's hard to understand why the administration would even consider such drastic measures, especially given the already precarious state of the program. The proposed cuts are not just a minor adjustment, they would fundamentally alter the nature of Social Security. By reducing benefits and increasing the age of eligibility, the Trump administration is essentially taking aim at the most vulnerable members of our society. It's a move that would further exacerbate income inequality, leaving those who need it most to fend for themselves. The public is right to be outraged, and it's our responsibility to hold our leaders accountable for their actions. We're not just talking about some abstract policy change here, we're talking about people's lives. We're talking about the retired worker who relies on Social Security to pay their rent, or the disabled individual who needs these benefits to afford medical care. The proposed cuts would have a ripple effect throughout our communities, causing untold suffering and hardship. The details of the proposed cuts are shocking. According to experts, the changes would affect millions of Americans, including veterans, disabled workers, and low-income families. It's a draconian approach that ignores the very purpose of Social Security, to provide a safety net for our most vulnerable citizens. This is not a partisan issue, it's a matter of basic human decency. One of the most damning aspects of the proposed cuts is the sheer hypocrisy of the Trump administration. During his campaign, the president promised to protect Social Security, even going so far as to claim that he would be the best thing that ever happened to the program. Fast forward to today, and we see a completely different story. It's a stunning betrayal of trust, and one that has sparked widespread outrage among Trump's own base. Take, for example, the story of Maria Hernandez, a disabled worker who relies on Social Security to survive. In a recent hearing, she testified about the devastating impact these cuts would have on her life, forcing her to choose between paying her rent and affording medical care. It's a heart-wrenching story that puts a human face to the statistics, and one that should outrage us all. The testimony of experts is equally damning. Dr. Nancy Altman, a renowned Social Security expert, has called the proposed cuts a disaster waiting to happen. She's right, the consequences of these changes would be catastrophic, undermining the very foundations of our social safety net. As we summarize the key points discussed today, one thing is clear: the proposed cuts to Social Security are a grave threat to our collective well-being. The backlash is real, and it's our responsibility to keep pushing for change. We can't let our leaders get away with breaking their promises and harming our most vulnerable citizens. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments about the proposed cuts. If you're interested in learning more about Social Security and the impact of these changes, be sure to check out my other videos on the topic. Let's keep the conversation going.
Well, that's the news for tonight. Thank you so much for continually supporting our content. If you did enjoy this video, hit the thumbs up button, subscribe and turn on the notification bell, and share this with your friends and family. I'm sure they would find it interesting as well. We're very excited to continue this journey with you. We thank you all for bringing certain stories to our attention, and for continually keeping us updated with certain events around the world.